What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel, Clemente Collector. And today's episode is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to look at Clemente cards, and we're going to look at what the pricing of Clemente cards have done in the last 5 years. I looked at three Clemente cards that I think are important, and we're going to look at them in different grades and what the pricing has done since 2019. And also kind of look at how far they've come down since their peak in 2021. So I think a lot of people out there right now are really worried about the card market and how prices have been going down. I think a lot of collectors out there, like myself, though, aren't very worried because we would love to get cards for a lower prices than what they've been. But it's always good to go back, look at the numbers, and get an idea. And what I'm going to be able to tell you at the end of this is what grade is the best grade to buy, let's say, a Clemente rookie card in, and what is maybe the worst grade to buy a Clemente rookie card in. And what we're going to end with is actually kind of cool. I'm going to look at the Clemente cards and compare them to the S&P 500 over the last 5 years, Bitcoin over the last 5 years. And I was curious to see if somebody was an investor, would it be better to put their money into something like the S&P 500, or would it be better to put their money into some of the vintage superstars? All right, without further ado, let me get into the presentation. I think you guys are going to really enjoy this. All right, so I'm calling this presentation the Clemente Index. And to start off, we're going to look at the 1955 Clemente rookie card. I think this is the perfect card to examine. The reason why I think it's perfect is because a lot of collectors out there only go after Hall of Fame rookie cards. So let's take a look at Clemente here. So what I wanted to do was I just wanted to focus on PSA because they have the most data out there, and they have the biggest market. So I looked at PSA, and I looked at PSA Authentic, PSA 2, PSA 4, PSA 6, and PSA 8. And I use VCP to get sales results from eBay and auctions, and I had hundreds and hundreds of price points to look at. So I feel really good about the data. So looking at this chart here for the 1955's Topps rookie card, I wanted to highlight at the bottom here, I have a row down here that says peak versus today. So as you see, for example, the PSA Authentic has gone down 11%. If you bought an Authentic card at the peak and then you bought that card today, or you sold that card today, I mean, you're down 11%. And then this last column is 2019 versus today. So if you bought an Authentic in 2019 for $723, you could sell it today for $1,224. I do understand Authentic is very hard because you could have a great looking Authentic card and a not so great looking one. But if you look at the other columns, you might be able to get a little bit more accuracy here. The one thing you could tell from this chart is for the rookie card, the PSA 2 would have been the best investment you could make. You could have bought it for $685 in 2019, and you could sell it for $1,769 today. It's a gain of 158%. Also, if you bought a PSA 2 at the peak, it's actually holding strong here today. So you would actually be up 3%. Something else to point out is the PSA 6 has done horrible. So if you bought it in 2019 and you sold it today, you gained 34%. But if you bought it at the peak, you're down 20%. So PSA 8 has done well, but that's kind of a place where a lot of us can't play in. So, it's kind of hard to really look at PSA 8. PSA 2, 4, and 6 might be something more that, the everyday collector could afford. So let's look at the chart here. It's the same thing I just showed you. It's just in a chart form. It kind of gives you an idea of the dip here. And as I said before, this red line's PSA 2. PSA 2 has not dipped like the other ones. It's actually pretty steady compared to the peak. So let's go on to the second year Clemente card, the 1956 Topps card. So These results are interesting as well. So, and feel free to pause this video at any time if you want to look at these charts closer. But so as far as peak versus today, the best result was actually the PSA 8. It's a $6,000 card today. Um, but at the peak, you could have got it for 5,000, and you could sell it for about 6,000 today. What was interesting about the second year card is its peak was actually last year and not during 2021. I thought that was really interesting. Um, the PSA 4, though, for the everyday collector has been the best as far as holding up versus the peak. And then as far as if you bought the cards in 2019, a PSA 4 and a PSA 6 are actually the best two grade ranges you should have bought in 2019 as far as getting a return as far as what they're worth today. So I think this is really interesting. It's also interesting that Authentic, you paid $229 in 2019 and they're worth 236 today. They've had very little movement. So very interesting. And then here's the chart for the same thing I just showed you. And then let's go on to the 1964 Top Stand-Up card. So I wanted to pick something a little bit different, a non-base card, but a popular card. So I had to do PSA 4, 6, and 8 because Authentic and PSA 2s are not very commonplace for this card. So I decided to go with 4, 6, and 8 grades. All right, so this card's very interesting. So the peak versus today, it's pretty much across the board. If you bought this card at the peak, you're actually pretty much break even today. The other thing is 2019 to today, big increases across the board. So this card has raised in popularity a lot over the last 5 years. The biggest gainer is PSA 4. You would be up 146%. The biggest not gain is the PSA 8, but it's still 95%. But you'd be up 50% more on the PSA 4 versus PSA 8. So I thought that was really interesting. But as I said, this card has been a lot more popular than it was 5 years ago. All right, next, what grade to buy? So I took all three cards, I combined them, and this is just all three combined into one chart. So if somebody came up to me today and said, "Hey, I'm gonna put my money into Clemente cards. What grade do you think will do the best over the next 5 years?" So over the next 5 years, it's actually the PSA 2 is showing the best results at 155% return. And then also as far as from peak to today, the PSA 2 is only down 1%. So it's pretty much break even and it's shown the best results over the last 5 years. If somebody asked me what's the worst grade to put money into, I would say the PSA 6. I think it's because it's a tweener grade. It's not as high end as what a high end person would buy, like a 7 or an 8, but it's also too expensive for somebody who just wants the card and just wants good eye appeal. So I would say PSA 6. From the last 5 years, the PSA 6 has only gone up 47%. And from the peak, it's down 18%. So I would say a PSA 2 is a great way to go. And I would probably say avoid Authentic unless you could find the right Authentic, because you don't know what you're going to get there. So very, very cool results here. All right, next I am going to look at Clemente versus the financial markets. I want to give a big shout out to Matt from The Card Story. He helped me with the financial numbers. That's his expertise. So blame him if you think any of these numbers are off. But thank you, Matt. So what we're looking at here is this column here. The first column here is the S&P 500. The second column here is the International Stock Exchange. The third column is Bitcoin. And then we have the PSA 2 combination and the PSA 4 combination for Clemente. So this is really, really cool. So peak versus today, it's funny because obviously the financial markets peak was also 2021. So we can actually compare apples to apples here. So if you look at it, the S&P 500 since the peak in 2021 is down 7%. And as I said, the PSA2 Clemente is down 1%. Bitcoin since the peak's down 39%. Um, so the other thing is the last 5 years. So last 5 years, S&P 500 is up 86%, international's up 27%, Bitcoin's up a whopping 657%. That's an outlier. Not a lot of people were buying Bitcoin in 2019, but PSA 2 155 and PSA 4 114. So if you take the outlier of Bitcoin out, if you bought Clemente cards, or at least the Clemente cards I showed today, you'd actually be in a better financial position than if you bought either the S&P 500 or the International Stock Exchange. So, hey, I'm not saying to invest in vintage baseball cards or invest in Clemente over the S&P 500. All I'm saying is this is the results based off of the numbers that we ran today. Well, that was a lot of fun. If you guys like this type of video, let me know. I could do SGC versus PSA for Clemente cards or another player. I could also look at buy it now versus auction. I think that would be very interesting, but I'd love to hear what you guys think. I'd love to hear if you guys don't agree with the way I did I ran a certain result. I would love to hear if there was a certain way I did something that you don't agree with that maybe I could improve in the future. This was a different type of video for me, but I love numbers, and this was a lot of fun for me. So, if you guys liked it, let me know. Give me a like if you did. I appreciate it. If you're not subscribed to my channel, please do so. I would really appreciate it. And I just want to say thank you for taking time out of your day to watch this video, and I'll see you guys on the next one.